All right, I think we're good, finally. Wow, that was more stressful than it needed to be, but here we are. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I call myself the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to giving you another edition of your Adrenal Fix. So today I wanted to talk to you about answering any questions you may have, which I'm really excited about. I also wanted to talk to you about ketosis, dietary ketosis. I get that question a lot, and I find it like very, very intriguing, you know, because I was at my son's soccer game the other day, and a couple of my good friends told me that they were on the ketogenic diet, and I said, oh, how so? And they said they have ketogenic aids, and that's how they're doing it. And the ketogenic diet doesn't work that way, number one. And number two, it assumes that you have relatively good health. It assumes that you have no gut microbial overgrowth. It assumes that you're absorbing all your nutrients. It assumes that you don't have inflammation. It assumes that your hormones are balanced. It assumes that your blood sugar is stable. And it assumes that you don't have any major stressors, because you can't just go into ketogenic diets, number one. So I wanted to talk to you about that. I also wanted to talk to you about genetic testing and what methylation has to do with it. Too many people are telling me that, oh, they don't have to worry about the genetics, they don't have MTHFR. And I said, well, what about all the 4,000 other genes that you have that may not be working effectively? On top of that, 23andMe or methylation or MTHFR, even though it's not inhibited or you think that it's working properly, perhaps the inhibitors or things that slow it down, or the cofactors, the things that you need to absorb, or the toxic environment that may speed things up, or things below it or in front of it or beside it may not be working well either. And so those are all going to be problems, even though MTHFR is quote unquote not a problem. So too many people, and then they don't really do testing where they look at the relationship between 23andMe and all your other tests, like you know, looking at 23andMe and homocysteine, or looking at 23andMe and iron, or 23andMe and your white blood cells, or 23andMe and your organic acid test, or 23andMe and the Dutch test. If you don't look at all those pieces of the puzzle together, how are you going to know how to put together a program? So that's really what I wanted to talk to you guys today about. I'm trying to see if there's any comments. And I don't see where the comment bar would be, but if there is anyone that's watching, that would be great. And then you can ask me any questions as well. So I guess the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, when we're looking at this methylation profile, which you're not going to see perfectly, but I'm going to help you get a little bit of a better idea, is MTHFR is right here. MTHFR is right there. And when MTHFR is right there, there are things that will slow that down, and it decreases activity. And one of the major things that decreases MTHFR is low T4. I'm sorry, that's backwards. I thought I set that up. Let me see if I can fix that. There. Perfect. So that should be working better now. So when you have low T4, it's going to slow down MTHFR. So why would we have low T4? One of the reasons we may have low T4 is because we have hypothyroidism. What would be one of the reasons that we have hypothyroidism? Because we have an autoimmunity. Our own immune system is attacking our thyroid, and it's not allowing us to make enough T4. If it doesn't make enough T4, what will happen is we'll have decreased riboflavin being activated, FAD. So riboflavin is activated by T4 into something called FAD. And FAD is now a cofactor of helping MTHFR work. So even if your MTHFR is normal, it may not be working properly because FAD, which is the cofactor for that to work, is not being produced at adequate levels because you have a low thyroid function because of an autoimmunity. Now, if you also have an FAD deficiency, it's also going to slow down this MTR enzyme that's necessary to methylate B12. So now all of a sudden there's this whole other enzyme that we need to know about, and it's called mTRR. Also, FAD is very important for MAO activity, to be able to help clear out dopamine and to be able to remove adrenaline or epinephrine or, from the body. So if your riboflavin is low because of T4 not activating it, then we have this whole problem. It's going to slow down your methylfolate production. It's going to slow down your methylcobalamin production. It's going to increase your hydrogen peroxide. And as a result, you're going to deplete your glutathione. And glutathione is a really, really important cofactor for the body's main antioxidant for putting out fires. And if you lose your glutathione production, then all of a sudden your own cells become oxidized. And when your own cells become oxidized, now all of a sudden you have free radical damage, you feel older, you have graying of your hair, wrinkling of your skin, not repairing of your cells, and that's what creates huge problems. So that's the biggest issue. Hey Kelly, hopefully you're doing well. I didn't know if I was going to be able to see anyone asking questions because of this new, I do have the new iPhone. The last time that I did one of these Facebook Lives, my phone cracked. And so I got it replaced, but now I'm trying to figure out the iPhone 10, and I can see that you guys are asking questions. So Kelly, you're experiencing this. Blood pressure is bottoming out. So when I think about low blood pressure, I think about low sodium. And when I think about low sodium, I think about low cortisol. And when I think about low cortisol, I think about increased stress for a long time. And potentially I also think about aldosterone causing depletion of your minerals. And when that happens, we tend to have low blood pressure. We're not able to manage our stressors. We could have that feeling like we're going to pass out, feeling like when we stand up, we get dizzy. And really that is a long-standing adrenal thing. And as that goes on and on and on, we lose our ability to also just regulate our body temperature, regulate our heart rate, regulate our electrolyte balances. And so it creates huge problems. That's not even getting into a methylation problem. That's getting into a huge problem in terms of just inflammation and not being able to control it. And so I'm going to take you guys over to my board here, and I wanted to talk to you about a test that I did on one of my patients. And we did her Dutch test, and we pretty much found that her free cortisol was bottoming out, her metabolized cortisol was bottoming out, and her DHEA was bottoming out. And when we looked at her curve of her graph, it should be nice and low in the morning, but have a really nice spike. And then as the day goes on, she sort of tails off and goes down. That's what it should look like. Hers looked like this. So she pretty much was in a chronic stress response where her free cortisol was really low, her metabolized cortisol was really low, and her DHEA was really low. So she wasn't able to mount a response. This would be someone that would have low sodium, low blood pressure, and just tired throughout the entire day. It's a huge problem. And that was a Dutch test that we did. When we looked at her estrogen was low. Her progesterone, which is not totally progesterone, it's something called pregnanediol, because there is no progesterone in the urine. And then her testosterone was in the middle. And that's because we were on testosterone replacements. So then we went to the second page and we looked at her, let's go a little lower. We looked at her phase 1 of liver detox, and she was good. She was at about 80%. And then we looked at her phase 2, and because there was so little estrogen to process, she was okay, but it was low, and I already know she had a lot of methylation issues, and when she does, the problem is that she's not able to convert her estrogen out of the body. So we have two phases of estrogen. We have phase 1, which is sort of making fat soluble, water soluble, and then phase 2 is bringing water soluble out of the body, or ready to get out of the body. And so she was okay on these, but she just had no substrate. And one of the things I told her is, how can we get more substrate? And so she says, well, I'm on DHEA. Okay, well, what else could we go on that would be helpful? We could go on pregnenolone. That would be helpful. It's actually upstream from DHEA. It would be very helpful. But what's upstream from pregnenolone is cholesterol or healthy fats. So we can eat healthy fats in terms of avocados, seeds, nuts, even we can eat eggs, or we can eat coconut oil or MCT oils. So then we get back into getting into keto. But if you just go full sort of cold turkey, so to speak, and don't take care of your microbial overgrowth, and you starve out the yeast and candida and fermentation process, you're going to have a lot of die-off, and you're not going to enjoy that. On the other hand, if you go straight into ketosis or try to get into ketosis, not only are you going to get a lot of die-off, but you may feed some of those microbial bugs, and you may have a lot of issues with absorption, because after all, we're not methylating very well. And when we need to methylate, or we need to methylate in order to absorb healthy fats and concentrate the bile and be able to make enough choline for that bile to flow and move. And that's why you have a lot of people that have gallstones that have a lot of congestion. Hey, Margaret, I hope you're doing well. Good to see you here as well. Anyways, that's sort of what I wanted to talk to you guys about. I know there was a question before there, Orly. You said, is Dutch different from the spit cortisol test? Yes, the Dutch test is a 4-point urine test, where you're peeing at different times of the day, and you are able to look at the metabolites. So whereas saliva is very good at the cortisol, which is at the sort of the circadian rhythm where it's going at different times of the day, the Dutch test still does it at different times of the day, but the research shows that urine samples aren't the best at tracking your circadian rhythm. They're good, but they're not the best. And so I do all three. I do blood testing, I do cortisol testing through urine, and cortisol testing through saliva, and they all tell us really, really good things. But where the Dutch test really shines is it looks at your metabolized cortisol, which means how much did you use up at the end of the day. It looks at your free cortisol, which saliva does as well, but it gives us the ratio of how much is being utilized, how much of free is there, and how much are you using up. And then it also looks at your 8 different estrogen metabolites in terms of phase 1 and phase 2. So it lets me know how well you're breaking it down. It lets me know if there's a genetic component that I need to be concerned about. It also lets me know about if you're aromatizing, if you're insulin resistant, and that's causing, for men, it's causing the male hormones to aromatize into estrogens, or for women, it allows me to know if their estrogens are aromatizing into testosterone. We see upregulation of 5-alpha enzymes that lets us know there's a lot of inflammation in the body. We see upregulation of 11-beta HSD, which lets me know that that person is potentially converting cortisone, which is inactive, into cortisol, and that may be responsible for them not being able to sleep. So the Dutch test is indispensable when we're doing evaluations for an adrenal, just as the saliva test is, and just as the blood test is. But I just don't like doing one of them, because the blood test will tell me about the pituitary hormones and whether or not there is a secondary sedation of the pituitary that's causing the downstream adrenals to not work very well, and that's why there's the problem. So you got to look at the entire picture, and more importantly, you got to look at it at the Dutch test. I have too many people that tell me, or Dutch test, the DNA test, too many people that say, oh, it's not important, and oh, I didn't do it. or oh, I didn't think it related to my problem, or oh, I already did MTHFR and I was told I was normal, or someone else already did that for me and I went on B12 and methylfolate and I don't have to worry about that anymore. That's why my hair is so short, because it makes me want to pull out my hair, thinking you're missing the point. You just flushed the baby down with the bathwater, and there's a whole lot of information you didn't even look at that you could have let you know what you're going to do to fix that. So it really upsets me when I see that. What causes circadian rhythms to be out of sync? Stress, chronic stress. The circadian rhythm is really sort of like an HPA axis thing. So if we come back over to here, we have the hypothalamus, we have the pituitary, we have the adrenals, but we also have the amygdala, and we also have the hippocampus. And the hippocampus really is that part of the brain that regulates sort of that output, that circadian rhythm of, you need to, do it a lot in the morning, a little bit at night. And a lot of our organs and endocrine systems, they work on a circadian rhythm. And over time, that hippocampus gets bombarded with cortisol. And cortisol is very, very detrimental to that hippocampus. And that's what we see in terms of pre-diabetes or even type 3 diabetes in terms of Alzheimer's, where cortisol levels are just not being regulated, and it will destroy that hippocampus. So now all of a sudden, we're tired in the morning and we're wide awake at night, or we're very forgetful. We have short-term memory. And as well, cortisol will also kill that prefrontal cortex. That prefrontal cortex is where we sort of talk about our conscious centers, where we forget about what's, proper behavior, and we get stressed out and we don't think rationally, and we do more impulsive things that is not really part of our personality. And so cortisol will really, really impact that. And then as a result, your amygdala, sorry, I don't know why I put it B, your amygdala will now define a scene as overwhelming. And so now it becomes a vicious cycle where you've already placed a stressful meaning to an event that is not really commensurated with the severity of the situation, but your amygdala is putting it into crazier context. Your cortisol levels are fluctuating between high and low, because now you're not able to produce as much, and now feedback loops become broken, and now thermostats get off, and now cell receptors start to downregulate because they're being bombarded, and now it's going haywire. So I hope that answered your question, Donna. Anyways, is there any other questions? I was really frustrated because I was trying to get this started and I couldn't get it started. I hope I deleted all of my first takes. I almost felt like it was bloopers where you can see the person swearing after like the 7th take and the 8th take and the 9th take. I had about 10 takes where it's like, okay, I think it's finally going. But anyways, what were the other things I wanted to talk to you about? I wanted to talk about testing, which we talked about, the Dutch test, the saliva test, and the blood test. We do all three of those so that we can look. And the other thing about testing is there has to be a before and after. That's a really big thing. I see a lot of people where I don't ever see if there's an after. So how do you know if you've improved? How do you see if there's been any improvements? I had a really great test today with a patient, and we did her original Dutch test in June, and we did a recent one in October. So it went from 06 to 10. So we had 4 months. And what I found was, in her case, her metabolized cortisol stayed about the same. So she still was, and it was very low. So she still had a chronic stressor, not being able to keep up with her demands. So she still felt worn out. She did feel a little bit better. What we did see is her free cortisol got better. So she's able to at least, carry some money in her pocket, so to speak, meaning Whereas she's not spending a lot of money for the entire day to get through it, at least she's got some spending money. So she did feel better in that way. And we saw that on the Dutch test. We also saw that her reserves, her DHEA had gone up, which impacted her testosterone, which she didn't feel quite as worn out. And these are all natural botanicals. She was on no bioidentical hormones except for thyroid hormone. And what was really great was her progesterone went up and her estrogen went up. And so there was a lot of improvements. But again, with her, I asked her, how would you know if you were getting better? And she really didn't know either. And because she wasn't crystal clear on that. So again, I got her to write out all the things that she doesn't want to be feeling and all the things that she does want to be feeling, so she can know if she's getting closer to that. Because she asked me, well, how long will this take to get better? And I asked her, what do you mean by better? How do you define better? What are you missing out on that's unacceptable? And what is it that you want in your life that would give you completeness, and what would give you built-in energy, and what really motivates you, and what's a true expression of what you want to do, and what are you missing out on? Because the test doesn't tell you that. You can be like other people I've known that are actually watching this particular video, and they were like this, and they're like, well, I'm looking at these tests here, and I don't see, like, I have all this paperwork, and I'm looking through all this paperwork, and I don't get where I'm, and I say, well, wait a minute, how are you feeling? Like, how do you know how you're feeling? And it's like, well, let me just look in this piece of paper and find out how I'm feeling. You're not going to find that out. You need to know, what is it that you're not missing out on? Or what is it that you are missing out on? And if you can't define that, then how are you going to decide if you're getting better or not? So it's really important to know what an outcome it is that you're looking for to decide if you're getting better. That was a really aha moment for her too. And so our game plan was really, we continued to support her HPA axis. We use a supplement called Adrenal. It's by Apex. And you can order Apex online. They're really fussy about that, so you need to have an account. I did have an online store, and I was just told today that they're no longer going to carry my Apex product, so sorry about that. But if you PM me in this link, I'll tell you how to go about that. We were going to do some Adrenastim. It was high concentration phosphatidylserine, which was also going to, that was the calm, and then the stim had some licorice root, which she could tolerate. She didn't need any DHEA. She didn't need any pregnenolone, like the other lady that I told you over here did. And we were really going to get into some more methylation stuff. We were going to start some SAMe. She had never done that. That was going to help support all of her methylation downstream enzymes that need SAMe, so things like COMT, PNMT, and we were going to also help with 5-HTP with some serotonin support to help her calm down and be content, because she was really missing that contentment. Maybe one of the reasons why she didn't really know what it was that was motivating her. So combined with the physiology and the biochemistry and the genetics is the psychology of what is it that you want. We're putting all those pieces together. And then we also were going to get into detoxing. So Epsom salts can be awesome. Cal-mag citrate could be really great for oxalates, which we knew she had high oxalates. And it really came down to a lot of things. Where it comes down to is absorption. I mean, she's absorbing her proteins a lot better now, because we saw in her blood work her proteins and her globulin levels normalize. Her iron is doing better, so she's secreting enough acid now to break down her not just her B12 and absorb that and get that methylation cycle working, but her iron. And iron's a really important cofactor for proteins to be able to make tyrosine and to be able to make dopamine and be able to feel like you're motivated and also feel like you're content. But when you have overgrowth of bacteria and you have a lot of acidity and you're not secreting a lot of juices, you're gonna steal away the protein that you are absorbing, and it's gonna go and make excitatory neurotransmitters that's gonna bombard the cell, and all of a sudden you're in overwhelm and you're not able to calm down. You don't feel joy. You don't have any really contentment. You can't fall asleep. You are wired and tired. And this is really what was going on. This is what's going on with a lot of you guys. So anyways, I hope that's helpful for you guys. And she's doing awesome too. So even though we didn't, we saw her actual curve looked something like this. It was kind of like it was dysregulated. So now her curve looked something like this. So it actually looked like a curve. So it was definitely getting improved. We no longer had that breakdown of that hippocampus. We were getting her rhythm back on, but we were also getting some more free cortisol, and we were also working on the next level. So that was a huge distinction for both of us. So, but it was all possible with a follow-up test. And how many people don't do follow-up tests? And I needed to look at her genetic test and break that out while we were going through all this, so that I can see, on top of the fact that she's not absorbing her proteins, and her proteins are being stolen down this chymeric pathway, and nothing's left to go down here, and nothing's left to go down into here. She's also clearing these at a higher rate because of genetic SNPs. And so it's digital medicine, really, is what it is. Anyways, I hope that's helpful. Donna, what causes, oh, sorry, I missed someone else here. I'm glad that's helpful. Orly, thank you for answering my question. I have first consultation. I saw that. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Your case is complicated, but it seems as though many patients are. Welcome to the complicated club here, where I work with the perfect storm patient, where sort of like send us your rejects and the difficult cases. And I don't mean rejects derogatory. I mean it in terms of, you have stacks and stacks of paperwork, Santa Claus bag of supplements, and your blood tests are normal, and there's nothing wrong with you, and you're crazy, and it's just you need another antidepressant to go on, and you got a little bit better, but you have that perfect storm of just ungodly inflammation and crazy environmental stressors, which I call environmental triggers, that overlap with the genetic loaded gun of susceptibilities that create that perfect storm. So I know you better than you know you. Unfortunately, I'm you also, but I also know that there is hope. And as bad as the world is toxic nowadays, the world, our information base is really, really awesome now, and we can really have amazing recoveries. So I look forward to talking to you as well. Donna, what causes a headache that feels like you have a hangover but don't? Lots of differentials: inflammation, too much sulfation, glucose levels, liver's not doing a good job, buildup of lactate, fermentation of glucose, not being able to respire properly, so mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation that's not being balanced by antioxidant production, cell death, not being able to get information into the cell, excitatory sort of escape, where you're not able to turn off the overstimulation. You're in parasympathetic fight or flight, and there's no sympathetic fight or flight. There's no parasympathetic rest and digest. All of the above. And somewhere in between. So that's a good answer for you. Dr. Rosen, do you feel that the chlorine and fluoride in tap water creates thyroid issues for the average person? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a friend here. He's from Toronto. Hopefully he's not watching. But he says, I just can't stand the Florida tap water. The Toronto tap water is so much better. And I'm like, who drinks tap water nowadays? I mean, you just don't drink tap water. And yes, I know that the fluoride, the fluoride, the chloride, those halogens will really impact a lot of those sort of the thyroid, because iodine is part of that same process. But it's a factor. It's not the main factor. I'd be looking at what else is in the water. Like, is there heavy metals? People flush their medication down the water too. I know there's doctors that were advocating, like, let's put cholesterol in the tap water, or sorry, statins in the tap water. But I just think in today's day and age, how are we not drinking, at least in the very least, filtered water, from your fridge even, or distilled water? And I'm not for like buying bottled water per se, but get filtered water or get a filter. Kagan systems, I think they're expensive. How do I feel about the pH of being so high? I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. I think that there's simpler ways to do it, and that's all I'll have to say about that. Hopefully that's helpful. Vicky, what's the easiest way to get into ketosis? The easiest way is to do it the hard way, is the easiest way, which means, get your basics down. Decrease inflammation, stabilize your glucose levels, help your absorption issues, break down your foods, eat good quality foods that looks like nature made it, not the lab made it. Breathe oxygen, put your feet on the ground and your cell phone off when you're eating. And really start to stabilize your glucose levels and know what's your calories, like know how many carbs you're eating in a day, and know your stress levels and know the things that set you off, and really sort of start to get the basics. And then once you get those basics, once you're sleeping better, once you're moving and breathing oxygen, and once you're not in sort of stress mode, all sympathetic driven, and once your inflammation is controlled, and once you're absorbing your nutrients, now start to ramp up your healthy fats, start to lower your carbs. Keep your diversity in terms of your microbiome healthy. So I look at net carbs, meaning your fiber minus your carbs. So if I had a banana, 30 grams, say, and 5 grams of fiber, it's 25 grams of carbs. So everything that is fibrous, like kale and broccoli and Swiss chard and bok choy, those are all free. And don't get me started on, well, what about broccoli? I heard that it's, goiterogenic, and that if, it's not good for the thyroid. And you're tripping over pennies to save dollars when you do that. And if I had a trump card, don't say Trump, if I had like a wild card and you had a king, my wild card beats your king by getting the beneficial nutrients in the broccoli, versus your king is not going to beat my wild card for the impact that it's going to have on the thyroid. Hopefully that made sense. And that's the easy way is the hard way. And that's it. If there's any other questions, I got to go to my son's soccer game. He is playing for the junior varsity team. He quit his club team this year, which was more heartbreaking for me because he was really good, and it was like I took it really personally. But he signed up for varsity, and he's wearing number 4, which was my number. So I'm really proud of the little guy, and hopefully he's gonna have a great game. So I do these usually once a week. I haven't been doing them as frequently because I've been interviewing a lot of people, and I have a new podcast that's out. A lot of that content I recorded a while ago, so we're uploading that, but all the content that I do with my new guests, that's all brand new. I have a YouTube channel. I also have the Instagram, I have the podcast, I have the Facebook Lives, and I'm just trying to create content for you guys to give you what you want to hear. I came in late. You have been talking about me. Yes, I knew Cheryl, you left me some notes about you. It's kind of how I felt. I think I may have it here. if you know the thyroid book, I don't have it here, but the thyroid book by Dr. Karazian, that's how I first learned about adrenal fatigue. Was I had an acupuncturist as a patient, and I was exhausted, I was burnt out, I was brain foggy, I couldn't handle stress, I'd crash in the middle of the day, and he said, you need to read this thyroid book. And I'm like, thyroid? I don't have a thyroid problem. So it just sort of sat on my desk for half a year, and people who know me know this story. And it was like this energy was pulling me towards it, pulling me, and every time I walked by, I was like, I don't need... So finally I picked it up. And Cheryl, when I got to the chapter on adrenal fatigue, like you, it was like it had this picture of me. It's like, how did it get a picture of me about being the poster child for the adrenals? And then all of a sudden, ever since then, I've been on this mission to yell from the rooftops that adrenal fatigue is a real problem that doctors don't want to talk about, because it would require putting their doctor hat on and really listening to what the patient says, and realizing it's not an easy thing. However, the deeper I've gone into it, the deeper I realize it's not adrenals, it's mitochondria, it's mitochondrial fatigue, and it goes much deeper than the adrenals. If the adrenals are messed up and it's been going on for a long time, then your cells are messed up, and that's been going on for a long time. And so your body can't detox, it can't maintain homeostasis, it can't balance blood glucose, it can't settle down inflammation, it can't fight off infection, it can't turn off genetic expression, it can't absorb nutrients, it can't regulate heart rate and blood pressure, lots of stuff going on. It can't make and break neurotransmitters. Now when you look at the genetic component on top of all of that, now it's that perfect storm that we talked about, like Orly was saying, is I'm a complicated case. Yeah, you have that perfect storm of, your blood tests are normal, but so you must be messed up. And unfortunately, nothing drives me more crazy when a doctor says, oh, we got all your inflammatory markers, there's no inflammation. I was like, dude, there's like 1,000 different inflammatory markers, and you're telling me I don't have inflammation because my CRP and my ESR was normal, so I don't have inflammation. I would tell that person to go back to medical school and learn that there's these new markers now, complementary cells, other acute phase reactants, other values that showcase inflammation besides your 2 or 3 that my body was really good at regulating around. And the last thing is that what really upsets me is when we go and get insurance, we are compared to a healthy norm. Like a really healthy norm. So if I'm not as healthy as that healthy norm guy, then I got to pay a higher premium. Because I'm at more at risk, and the actuary table say, well, if we're going to insure this guy, over let's say the next 20 years, that's that's 200 months plus another let's say another another 40 months. So it's going to cost us a certain amount of money for him. So your premium is going to go real high because you're not as healthy as that healthy guy. But when we do a test to see how healthy you are, to decide, if we need to put you on a medication or run a new test, we're not going to compare you to those guys anymore. We're going to compare you to the unhealthy people, because if you're not healthier or sicker than they are, then we don't have to pay for testing. Or if you, we don't have to sit down and listen and spend time figuring out what is wrong because you're not sicker than them. So it's either you're sicker than them or you're not. There's no shades of gray. You have to be over the line and come back when you're sick enough. But right now, you're not as sick as them, so nothing's wrong with you. You're crazy. But if you want to get an insurance policy, you're not going to get a very good rate because you're not very healthy. I mean, it's like talking out of both sides of your mouth. Anyways, you got me all fired up. Sorry about that. I got to go to my soccer game. I noticed your adrenal fatigue page, it didn't give me the option to be notified when you go live. Is there another way I can get notifications? It does give you options. It should do that, where next time I go live, if you go on there, it should let you know that I am going live. So anyways, that's all I got to say. Typically, I get really fired up. I usually say the unique thing about what I do is that I do give a crap, excuse my language, and that's sad because when you do give a crap and that makes you unique, unique and that you care, then that's the problem. The name of the book was, it's called Why Do I Have Thyroid Symptoms Even Though My Blood Tests Are Normal? And it was by Dr. Karazian. It's a little outdated now. It's a great book, good primer. He's a genius, that guy. He's got another book out. It's called The Brain Book. And those are both awesome books. And at one point I'll have my book out. But right now, this is my book. So anyways, I'm going to sign off. I hope you guys found that very useful and effective. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. And hopefully I'll see you guys next week. Take care and have a great week.